Urban sketching is a fun exercise and one of the most effective ways to enhance your observational drawing skills. Urban drawings in particular are one of the most essential skills to learn when looking to improve your ability to draw from life and just to understand the environment around you and how to represent it within a drawing format. So with that being said, hey guys, my name is Matt. Welcome to another video by artandcontext.org where we explore various art related topics, and in today's video we will be exploring an easy guide to urban sketching. Now we will be working with fundamental concepts of urban sketching, so this tutorial is done with a digital device. However, all drawing processes can be transferred to traditional drawing tools. So working with whatever drawing materials you have available to you is okay. Now we're going to learn how to create urban sketches. In this tutorial on urban sketching for beginners, we will first break down some basic concepts. As we proceed, we will discuss some core concepts about urban sketching that can help you to better understand the way in which you can approach an urban drawing. Now, some general concepts to understand. Urban sketching is a broad genre that encapsulates various practices that may include drawing structures and buildings. However, it can include drawing anything from life, and in that sense we are basically approaching a still life drawing process. The most important thing about urban sketching is to notice the environment around you and how that may inspire you to draw something. Now, tools. Normally we would find ourselves prepared within a public space to draw a subject before us. This means having some smaller tools can be really useful, or having a book on hand is really useful. You could also start with simple tools when you focus on more monochromatic drawings in the beginning, and then as you proceed you can start looking for maybe tools that you can layer, maybe colors, markers, and so on. So once we have some materials, the next thing you want to do is actually consider scouting for a space. Again, setting yourself up in a space where maybe the environment isn't necessarily moving or have too much detail at first, but then as you get comfortable you can explore more unique spaces. We also want to consider finer details and smaller structures such as clothing material, objects, poses, and various qualities that may be unique to a specific individual within a space. So the main things to think about are just our tools that we use, how we are scouting, and then moving on to maybe the last thing, which is perspective. So another major part of urban sketching is understanding the basic rules of 1, 2, and 3-point perspective, which will give you a better insight into how to form simple three-dimensional structures and then how to refine them into more complex and identifiable structures. So we do have a video on these 3 perspectives. You can look at that in the link below. But again, when it comes to perspective, for instance, if you were to draw something from 3-point perspective, you'll find that it gives the environment a very unique aesthetic, and the same can be said for 2-point perspective and 1-point perspective, whereby the rules used in either approach will affect the outcome of the drawing. In many instances, you will find that the nature of the subject you are drawing from the angle at which you draw it will inevitably have rules of perspective within the scenario deeply embedded into the reality of the actual space. But otherwise, once you understand these rules, it can make the process of defining the depth of field within an urban sketch quite seamless and quick. And then lastly, light and shadows. So with all that has been stated thus far, the most important thing to remember is the concept of light and shadow, working from vague light and shadow shapes into a more refined representation of unique details and features. We'll find that we'll always want to emphasize the areas of light and shadow to further contextualize those actual spaces and the three-dimensionality of the structures within the space. A funny rule to remember in urban sketching is to kind of squint your eyes, thus allowing the shadows and light of the actual particular environment to be much more blocky in a sense within your vision, and giving you an opportunity to understand it in a very basic rudimentary way of where the darker areas and the lighter areas are. But otherwise guys, these are the main concepts of urban sketching. So with that being said, let's look at how to create an actual urban sketch. Now that we understand some fundamental concepts, let's go through a step-by-step process on how to create one. So the first thing we want to do with creating an urban sketch is just sketching the scene. So we start with a light pencil sketch. Again, set yourself up in a space, have your tools ready, and by doing so we can just start with a very light pencil sketch where the intention is to sketch out the scenario as simple as possible. When sketching a complex environment with various features, you always want to keep it light and vague at first. At this point we can also start to utilize the rules of perspective and should already notice whether the scenario is seen from a 1 or 2-point or 3-point perspective. In doing so, you can utilize the rules of perspective to give your drawing a more realistic sense of depth. Now, another way to assist you in the placement of various features is to compare surrounding features to one another, which may help you to understand scale a little better. Looking at how large features actually are compared to one another will help you to place them more accurately within a single setting. Another major part of lightly sketching out the scene is to also consider lines of objects. So ask questions such as, do these lines move vertically, horizontally, or diagonally? And by doing this, it may help you to place structural lines a little bit more effectively. As you build up your sketch with your pencil, you will also notice that details are placed along certain planes depending on the perspective from which you are drawing your environment. So with this understanding of perspective and the rules of perspective, this can assist you with the placement of finer details, and in doing so you'll start to see how certain features are kind of placed in certain ways, whether it is along a horizontal or vertical plane, or whether it is higher or lower in the actual landscape. However, we shouldn't worry too much about perfecting details. Again, the beautiful thing about urban drawings is that there is always room for experimentation, being a little bit more stylized, a little scratchiness within our representation of these things. So we'll always find discrepancies between your representation of a space and the actual space itself, and this tends to work in your favor as it gives your work a unique aesthetic and a more nuanced look. Now, as we continue, we want to kind of proceed by building up layers of color. So once we have established a light sketch of the space, we can now start to build up the tonal values of our environment. This is where we get to play around with color. However, we are trying to pay attention to light and shadow as a way of helping us understand how dark or how light we should color certain spaces. So the intention is to always build up tonal values from light to dark. This way you can add darker marks later on as you refine your drawing. Again, thinking about the light source within the space and how this defines features is an essential part of this layering process. Now, you can of course recreate color values within your urban sketch, but using the light and shadow presence within the actual environment you are drawing is a great way to kind of just understand the basic three-dimensionality within the space. You can also start to use this as a means of comparing features to help you understand how dark or how light a certain feature should be. And what is meant by this is that if a window seems darker in comparison to the wall surrounding it, consider how that is an indication of how dark or light you should shade those features. So we do want to think about the light source. We also want to just think about how dark or how light certain features are in the actual space in comparison to the surrounding features, and thinking about how that kind of helps us to kind of shift through the entire landscape and where we should integrate lighter or darker moments. You can play around, of course, with simplifying and establishing the base colors of various features at this point. And you also don't need to worry about coloring in the lines. If colors overlap, that is okay. Once again, an urban sketch isn't about perfectly representing a space, but it is about representing the essence of the space, or kind of being a little bit more gestural with how we identify the structure. So having those little imperfections and discrepancies is a great way to kind of find our own creative voice of representing spaces as we continue throughout this drawing process. Now, as we continue into the next step, we're going to start enhancing the features with line work. So at this point, we want to start working on some finer detailing for our urban sketch. Now, this is where using pens and fine tip markers become a great tool for enhancing details, working over those overlapping qualities within those color variations. So the idea is to work over the colored features by working in some refined line work and shading to these various elements within your urban sketch. So this is where we start to outline the buildings, maybe start give more shape to the actual elements that are seen, whether it is figures or maybe motor vehicles or bicycles. The intention is to continue adding color as you proceed, however, but we are starting to refine various features as we do so. So we do want to define them a little bit more with some line work. So we don't want to just outline, but we also want to use our pens and markers to add some shading. This is where we could use line work as more of a shading type of integration as opposed to just outlining, and you can use them in tandem with one another to emphasize the structure of various elements. You will find that as you draw over a pencil sketch with some pen work, we can use the pencil lines to also define the placement of our pen marks. You do want to make sure that you use your pencil work as a way of kind of guiding your pen drawing process. Now, as we kind of proceed, we can also allow ourselves to be a little bit loose with the drawing. So this is where we start to have fun. We should have established the actual scene, we have established the shadows, the color variations, and kind of position them in their various places to define different structures. So now the idea is to really allow yourself to play. The most important thing about an urban sketch is to not forget that you are depicting an environment and there are no rules. This means you can interpret the space as you like and change details however you choose. However, once you have established a light pencil sketch and have worked in some basic tonal values to represent the areas of shadow and light, you can proceed to build up these layers with colored materials and finer line work. And lastly, consider the style of shading that works with your mediums. This can be cross-hatching, smooth shading, or a painterly style. Again, there are no rules, so have fun, establish the important parts in the sketch, and then allow yourself to kind of work with your line work and shading to really emphasize different structures. With line work and shading, you can also really enhance the shadows. That's another key component to really enhancing your urban sketching, but it is about just taking your time from this point onward and really going through each feature within your urban sketch one at a time and slowly enhancing it with some line work and shading. But otherwise, guys, there you have it, a brief guide on urban sketching for beginners. This tutorial does equip you with the basics and fundamentals, but you can utilize these concepts and kind of work loosely with them for your own urban sketching drawing process. If you did like this video, please do let us know in the comment section below. We'd love to hear back from you guys related to similar articles. If you are interested in such, you can let us know and we will try and get to them. And you can also show your support by liking and subscribing. This helps us to grow the channel, which ultimately enables us to make more art related content for you guys, which we love to do. But otherwise, thanks again for tuning in. See you in the next video. Cheers.